Good evening. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. The remand of Ghanem Bahat, the bus driver suspected of causing last night's deadly accident in the Galilee, has been extended until Sunday. 5 people were killed and 50 others wounded, including 4 with critical injuries, as the Egged bus en route to Tzfat smashed into a semi-trailer parked at the side of the road near Carmiel. The entire right side of the bus was demolished, and it then burst into flames. Eyewitnesses reported scenes of panic and heroism as bystanders forced open the bus windows and helped the survivors escape to safety. The bus driver, a 25-year-old resident of the village of Sajur, has been employed at the bus company for 3 months and, according to Egged officials, was just last week reprimanded for driving dangerously. Both he and the driver of the semi-trailer sustained light injuries in the crash. Several IDF officers on their way home for the weekend were killed, including 21-year-old IDF Sergeant Ines Sverdlov, IDF Captain Aviv Eldan, age 26, 42-year-old Major Salah Abdullah of the Israel Prison Service, Yitzhak Zohar Zahavi, age 56, and 62-year-old Asher Nidam. Police investigators believe that the bus driver followed the semi-trailer too closely and collided with it as it pulled over to the side of the road. In other news, it was cleared for publication today that security forces have arrested 6 Israeli Bedouin citizens suspected of involvement in terrorism-related charges. A gag order on the case was lifted earlier this morning, and police say further arrests are possible. All of the detainees are residents of the Negev town of Rahat and were arrested by a joint task force of police Shin Bet security forces for endangering lives after they allegedly routinely hurled firebombs and Molotov cocktails at motorists on the central Negev highway number 40. 2 of the suspects are minors aged 16 and 17 who were arrested yesterday, while the adults were arrested last month following ongoing investigations since April. According to police, the suspects acted with premeditated deliberation, warranting charges of terror. Turning abroad, and U.S. President Barack Obama and his Russian counterpart Dmitry Medvedev held a telephone conversation for some 90 minutes last night on a wide range of topics, including the need to form non-standard approaches to resolving problems in the Middle East. According to the Kremlin, Medvedev briefed Obama about his trip this week to Syria and Turkey, where he clearly expressed Moscow's willingness to play an active part in efforts to bring peace to the Middle East. The 2 presidents, who are slated to meet in the U.S. next month, also discussed Iran's disputed nuclear program. A White House statement reported that the 2 leaders discussed the good progress made by the United States, Russia, Britain, China, France, and Germany toward agreement for a 4th round of United Nations Security Council sanctions against the Islamic Republic for its refusal to halt uranium enrichment. According to the statement, both Obama and Medvedev agreed to instruct their negotiators to intensify efforts to reach a conclusion as soon as possible. Turning to the ongoing dispute in the capital over the implementation of demolition orders for illegally constructed Arab homes in East Jerusalem, and sources at the Ministry of Public Security say that they believe the Prime Minister's office will delay the slated demolitions. This following last night's request from the U.S. State Department for clarification over comments made by Public Security Minister Yitzhak Aharonovich earlier this week. Aharonovich told a special gathering at the Knesset in honor of Jerusalem Day that he intends to implement the demolition orders in the near future, and that any previous delays were attributable to diplomatic sensitivities and no longer in effect. In related news, the United States has called on both Israel and the Palestinians to avoid taking any action that would disrupt the recently renewed proximity talks, which will include the future status of Jerusalem. IBA's Yochanan El-Rom asked the former advisor to Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, Dr. Ra'anan Gissim, if the U.S. will apply the same pressure on the Palestinians as it does on Israel.
Well, first of all, there's one principle that must be applied, I think, on both sides right now, on all sides, in America, in the United States, in Israel, and the Palestinian, and that is refrain from making declarations. I mean, this environment is infused with over-declaration and too little implementation, both on the political process as well as on what we actually think we should do. There's no need to make those declarations. I think the timing is poor. I think if you have the laws on your side and you can demolish, you go and demolish, you do what you have to do, you don't make those declarations. I can understand that the occasion of the Jerusalem Day was the kind of occasion where where political leaders make declarations, but this is a very, I would say, poor timing because of the sensitivity of the issue. But that's the first thing. The second issue, of course, is the issue of reciprocity. If the United States says, you know, in so many words, that Israel must refrain from provocative acts and acts of incitement, that's fine. Okay, if you say new construction in Arab neighborhoods is a provocation, declaring demolition is a provocation, fine. Then we should apply the principle also to the Palestinian and demand from the United States in quiet talks and said, okay, while the negotiations go on, insightful sermons on Temple Mount should stop. Those kind of sermons on Friday that gather tens of thousands of people, where they call them to continue jihad, to take the blood of the Jews and do whatever, and that continues unabated. Then incitement in public television and in their official newspapers. All that, at least during that period, if you demand that we stop that, then the Palestinians have a responsibility, the Palestinian Authority, to stop that. And furthermore, you know, refrain from all subversive political activity, which now the Palestinians are engaged in East Jerusalem, at least the PLO and there, which is against the law. It's not just again, because according to the Oslo Agreement, there should be no political activity of this. This includes the Orient House and so forth.
Is the government of Israel cracking down on this activity in eastern Jerusalem or not? Are they turning a blind eye?
Well, I don't know. You know, that sometimes, you know, when it suits someone, you know, they show that they're doing something. But overall, I mean, that activity continues. And that should be a sine qua non principle, saying, okay, if you want on our side to maintain the status quo, not change the status quo, then that is required on the Palestinian side. But what we hear from the Palestinians, or from Saeb Erekat and others, is that the first demand in the talks is that we open the Orient House, which is, again, you know, it's a completely asymmetrical thing. We are demanded to stop all activities, all normal activities, while they could continue in activities which are, by and large, illegal.
President Obama has found out, as other U.S. presidents have, that it's not as easy to broker a final Palestinian-Israeli peace negotiation or peace treaty as they once thought going into the White House. Where do you see the Obama administration going now?
Well, there's no doubt that he's very determined to move forward on this peace process. I say determined, I should add also impatient. And, you know, and here in the Middle East, you can't push things too much. I think he will try to exhaust this pressure on Israel and add, I think, another more element, and that is in the offing for the fall, which is an international conference. That's the buzzword that they're talking in Washington. There are two types of conferences, of course. One is a ceremonial conference. We know from the past, 1973, 1991 in Madrid, were ceremonial. And then the real negotiations continued in bilateral talks, you know, with the Palestinian, with the Syrian. I remember I was part of that. And then, of course, there is what many American presidents wanted and never implemented, was the kind of international conference where you bring in all the other partners, the quartet, the Russians, and you impose a solution. In other words, Obama could actually, I mean, this is a possible scenario, take his plan for the Middle East and without the full consent of Israel, put it on the table. And then what we found is a very dangerous thing. It's not that they will say to us, take it or leave it, but we will find ourselves negotiating, not with a Palestinian, not just with Obama, but with Obama and the whole quartet. That's a very dangerous development which can be prevented if we take certain actions today. One of them is to put our own plan on the table.
The body of a 16-year-old Palestinian youth was found in the West Bank overnight. While IDF officials say that the cause of death is unclear, Palestinians insist that Asar Yasser from a village near Ramallah was shot and killed by settlers who opened fire after their car was stoned. The incident occurred on Highway 60 around 7 o'clock last night. An IDF official confirmed that shots were fired in that neighborhood following the stoning of several Israeli civilian vehicles, although he was unable to confirm whether there were any victims. An investigation is ongoing. A horror story with a happy ending. That's how Jewish agency officials are describing yesterday's arrival in Israel of 17-year-old Yadaniu Mulu. Just before Yadaniu's family left Ethiopia and immigrated to Israel 5 years ago, then 12-year-old Yadaniu was kidnapped and sold into slavery. Following years of efforts by the Jewish agency and the municipality of Beit Shemesh, where the Mulu family now lives, the young girl was finally located and flown to Israel. It was an emotional and tearful scene at Ben Gurion Airport in the early hours of the morning as Yadaniu was reunited with her mother and other family members. One of the nation's newest immigrants told reporters that she intends to forget her ordeal and begin a new life here in Israel. Israel this week commemorated the 43rd anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem in 1967. One resident of the capital immigrated from New York in 1956 and spent the Six-Day War here in the city. Nobel Prize winner Professor Israel Aumann described the atmosphere in Jerusalem to IBA's Eli Wogelenter in the days leading up to the war.
It was an extremely tense time. I have to tell you the truth. I was not sure that that Israel would survive this episode, and moreover, I wasn't sure that I personally would survive this episode with my own life and the life of my wife and children. Yeah, it looked as if Israel might well be destroyed, not in a year or in 10 years or in 50 years, but in 2 weeks. Yes, okay. Israel might be overrun by Egyptian and other Arab forces, and it looked very, very scary. I mean, I was simply said to myself, Johnny, that's my nickname, don't make the mistake your father made, staying in Germany too long. Pick yourself up. You have American papers. Your whole family has American papers. Pick yourself up, get on a plane, and get out of here. Get out of here before it's too late. Yeah. And then I said to myself, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm staying. Okay, I'm staying. But it was really touch and go.
So why did you decide to stay?
Why did I decide to stay? Because this is Jerusalem. This is something that I've been dreaming for thousands of years now. It may look as if I'm really thousands of years old personally with this long white beard, but it's not. That's not the case. I'm only about 80. But I identify with the yearning of my people for Jerusalem for thousands of years, and having just returned about 10 years earlier, I wasn't going to leave. And this is not, I said to myself, well, come what may, I am not going to leave. I am staying. What decided the war was the airstrike at the beginning of the war, and if the Egyptians had not been as foolish as to leave their airplanes on the ground at that time, if they would have put their airplanes in the air, then it could have turned out different, and I might not be sitting here talking to you today. You might not even be able to visit my grave. Yeah, this sounds dramatic, but that is God's honest truth.
So on the second day of the war, the old city, Jerusalem, is liberated. We hear on the radio, Har Habayit B'Yadeinu, the Temple Mount is in our hands. The news floats through the whole country, through Jerusalem. It's been liberated. What were you feeling then?
I was walking here near what is now the Sheraton Hotel, you know, down that area near the near Yamin Moshe. I was walking there, and I don't think it was the second day of the war. I think it was the third or fourth day. I don't remember exactly. I don't think it was the second day. I was walking there, and, you know, there was shelling going on, and I was looking at the old city, and suddenly from the southwestern corner of the old city where the Zion Gate is, yeah, I saw the Israeli flag flying. I have to tell you, just thinking of it now makes me all prickly all over. I mean, this was a tremendous feeling. Yeah, it was. Yeah, for me, it's not news report. I mean, I experienced this. Yes.
Turning now to arts and entertainment, and one of the hottest acts at this year's Jacob's Ladder Festival on the banks of the Sea of the Galilee was a duet comprised of folk veteran Shai Tuchner and rising star Lilach Shir. The two dedicated their performance to the memory of Tuchner's former musical partner, David Deckelbaum, who passed away just over 1 month ago. Deckelbaum and Tuchner performed in the legendary band The Taverners, which popularized Irish music in Israel during the 1970s. Deckelbaum's younger daughters were in attendance at the Jacob's Ladder Festival.
Oh, kisses sweeter than wine. Now our children have numbered just about 4, and they all have sweethearts knocking on the door. They all got married and they didn't wait. I was, almighty Lord, the grandmother of 8. Oh, kisses sweeter than wine. Oh, kisses sweeter than wine. Now we are old and ready to go. We get to think of what happened a long time ago. We've had lots of kids and troubles and pain, but then, almighty Lord, you know we do it again. Oh, kisses sweeter than wine.
David Deckelbaum was a unique character. He was one of a kind. First of all, he was a great, great, great friend. He was a great musician. I think the best claw-hammering all-time banjo player ever been in Israel. Like the best stage presence. I think he was the first one actually to introduce the Irish singing into the country and the bawdy ballad style. And actually, he's been a part of my life for 37 years, actually, from 73. And we played together in a band for 28 years almost, from 76 to 2004, until he moved to Canada.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, join in the chorus.
What are we doing?
I don't know yet.
David, we're still in the key of A.
I think that David had a big part in bringing this kind of music to Israel. Is that right?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. That's what I've been doing, you know. Actually, the Taverners was the first band ever in Israel to bring the folk music into the mainstream, because most of the places, we didn't play only for Anglos and for Jacob's Ladder Folk Festival, but we went to stages for normal Israeli audience who never have encountered this kind of music before, and we brought it to them.
Turning now to sports, and over 10,000 runners hit the Tel Aviv pavement this morning to participate in the annual Tel Aviv Marathon. The heat was too much for many of the athletes, however, and 24 finished the race in the emergency room of Ichalov Hospital, suffering from dehydration and heat stroke. 3 were admitted to the hospital in serious condition. And meanwhile, races of half marathon, 10 kilometers and 4.2 kilometers were ongoing, as were special races for disabled participants. Today's winner of the Tel Aviv Marathon is Avram Malchot, who specializes in ultra-marathon events covering distances of 80 and even up to 100 kilometers. Staying with sports, and Israel's taekwondo champion, 23-year-old Bat El Gatterer, has won first place in her weight class at the European Taekwondo Championships. The Kochav Yaakov resident was Israel's only representative in the field of taekwondo at the 2008 Olympics. She reached the games after taking a bronze medal at the European qualifying tournament in Istanbul. The observant Jew is unique among her peers, and Gatterer has occasionally arrived at competitions held on Shabbat by foot and sustained herself with a diet of kosher instant noodles while competing abroad. In financial news, the shekel put in a mixed performance in foreign currency trading, falling in strength against the U.S. dollar. Here are today's exchange rates. The The IBA weather team tells us we have a sizzling weekend ahead of us with unseasonably hot Sharav desert heat wave conditions due to last until Monday. Here's the forecast at home and abroad for the next 24 hours. That brings us to the end of this newscast. I'm Erin Viner, and the entire IBA team and I thank you for joining us this evening. We hope you'll tune in again tomorrow at 6 o'clock when I'll be here with more news and analysis from Israel and abroad. Have a wonderful evening, and Shabbat Shalom from Jerusalem.